Hello, friends. You're watching The Night Watchman, where every day you'll hear a brand new horror story that will send chills down your spine. But to keep bringing you these terrifying tales, we need your love and support. So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Now let's begin the story. Now we're Yadi. I still remember that Friday night far too clearly. Some memories stick, not because they're remarkable, but because something about them is wrong, like a faint scratch on glass you can't polish away. I had just finished my shift at the auto repair shop on Eastwood Drive in Cedarville, a sleepy town in Michigan. It was around 8:05 p.m., and the smell of motor oil and burnt rubber lingered on my hands despite washing them twice. I had a quick list in my head. Laundry detergent, bread, some eggs, and maybe a soda. Nothing fancy, nothing urgent. I drove my beaten-up blue Toyota Corolla down the main strip to Horizon Plaza, where a big Kohl's and a Safeway anchored the tiny shopping complex. But I decided on Market Mart, a local chain similar to Walmart, mostly because it was closer and familiar. The parking lot was half empty, just a few cars tucked under dim streetlights. A gust of March wind cut across the lot as I stepped out, and I tugged my jacket tighter. Inside, the store smelled of disinfectant, cheap candles, and floor polish. It was quiet, almost too quiet, for a Friday evening. A few shoppers wandered the aisles, some silently pushing carts, others staring at their phones like zombies. The fluorescent lights flickered ever so slightly, giving the place a sterile, almost unreal feel. I grabbed a cart and started toward the household aisle. I was halfway through the paper towels when I noticed him. He walked toward me, wearing the bright green Market Mart polo and black slacks. Nothing unusual about the uniform itself, but his presence was. He was tall, lean, maybe 6'2", with dark brown hair that was just long enough to sweep to the side. His face was pale, and there was a hollowed-out look in his eyes like he hadn't slept in weeks. "Hey," he said, voice soft but steady. "Looking for anything tonight?" I shrugged. "Nah, I think I'm good." He nodded slowly. "Okay, but if you need help, just let me know. We've got some sales on laundry detergent. Buy two, get one free." I smiled. "Thanks, but I'm all right." He hesitated just a beat longer than normal before saying, "No problem, have a good night." Then he walked away, turning a corner at the end of the aisle. I finished picking out my groceries, a couple of boxes of cereal, frozen chicken, a loaf of bread, and some soda. The store felt off. The music that played softly in the background, a mix of indie tracks and acoustic covers, echoed against the high ceilings, but something about it felt distorted, like it was being played underwater. At checkout, a young cashier with a short, spiky haircut and a nose ring greeted me. "Evening. Find everything okay?" she asked. "Yeah, thanks," I said, handing her my items. She scanned them silently, then smiled faintly. "Long day?" "You have no idea," I muttered. She nodded sympathetically and handed me my receipt. I grabbed my bags and walked toward my car. Outside, the air was still and sharp. Streetlights cast long pools of yellow across the asphalt, and the faint hum of the rooftop units added a background noise that made the quiet eerie my Corolla sat alone near the far end of the lot. I unlocked the doors, opened the trunk, and started loading my bags. And then I heard footsteps. At first, I thought it was someone heading to their car, but when I turned, my stomach dropped. It was the same man from inside the store, but now he wasn't in uniform. He wore gray sweatpants and a dark hoodie, the hood pulled up over his head. Same gaunt face, same piercing eyes. "Hey, sorry to bother you," he said casually, taking a step closer. "Think you could give me a ride?" I froze. I don't think so." He glanced around, shifting from one foot to the other. "Just a quick ride. My friend dropped me off, but they had to leave. Phone's dead, and it's cold out." I blinked, trying to process it. "Wait, you work inside, I just saw you." He shook his head slowly, calm, almost rehearsed. "Nah, wasn't me. You must be mistaken." I felt the hairs on the back of my neck rise. "No, it was definitely you. Don't lie to me." His face stayed blank. "I promise. I'm not lying, just need a lift. No, I said, firmer this time. You need to ask someone else. He didn't move. He just stared, blank eyes locked on mine. The silence stretched. My pulse throbbed in my ears. Finally, I tossed the last bag in the trunk, slammed it shut, and got into the car. I locked the doors, fumbling for my keys. He moved slowly, deliberately around the front of my car. I pressed the ignition. The engine roared. I didn't wait. I pulled straight out, tires squealing slightly against the asphalt. In the rearview mirror, I saw him standing there, just watching. The drive home was a blur. My hands shook the entire way. I kept checking the mirrors, half expecting him to appear out of nowhere. When I finally reached my apartment, I parked and sat for a long moment. My back was covered in sweat, even in the cold March air. I thought about the uniform, the way he had looked inside the store, the calm blankness outside. How had he changed so fast? Was someone else inside the store wearing the uniform? Or was he never there at all? The next morning, I called Market Mart. A woman with a firm voice answered. Market Mart, evening shift manager speaking. Hi, I had an odd experience last night. A tall man, dark hair, green polo. Did anyone like that work your evening shift? She paused. No, the only people on schedule were 2 cashiers, me closing, and the stock associate. No one matching that description. My stomach dropped. For days, I replayed the night in my mind. Every detail, every step, his eyes, the quiet persistence, the unnatural calm. Sometimes when I drive past that lot, I catch myself glancing over, expecting him to be standing there. Waiting again. I don't know who he was, or why he chose me, or if he does this to others. I just know that trusting my gut kept me safe, because if I hadn't, I might not be here to tell you this. Story 2. My name is Jason Keller. I'm 29, and I've lived in Cedarville, Oregon for about 4 years. Cedarville isn't exactly a bustling city. It's the sort of place where everyone knows your name, or at least thinks they do. The streets are lined with the usual chain stores, grocery, hardware, the occasional fast food joint that never closes. I work as a logistics coordinator at a regional warehouse. My days are predictable, and my nights are usually quiet. That night started like any other Thursday. I got off work around 10:15 p.m., exhausted, craving a cup of coffee in the comfort of my apartment. But then I realized I was completely out of coffee, and my fridge was empty except for some half-rotten vegetables and a few sad cans of soup. So I decided to make a quick run to Harbor's, a big retail store on the edge of town. It was late November, the kind of night where a cold wind sneaks through the gaps in your jacket, leaving your cheeks stinging. The parking lot was dimly lit, the overhead lamps flickering occasionally, like they were struggling to stay alive. I parked a little ways back, under one of those flickering streetlights that made the asphalt look patchy and uneven. As I stepped inside, the smell hit me. That weird mix of air freshener, detergent, and electronics dust that big stores always seem to have. The automatic doors whooshed behind me, and I half expected to see the usual night shift cashier, a young woman named Marcy. She was friendly, always greeted me with a tired smile that somehow made the place feel less empty. Hey, Jason, she said, voice soft but awake. Hey, Marcy, slow night? I asked, trying to sound casual. Like always. You're one of the last ones tonight, she replied, pushing a strand of hair behind her ear. I grabbed a cart and started walking down the aisles, grabbing a bag of coffee, a pack of paper towels, and a few frozen meals. The store had that eerie quiet that late-night shopping always seems to carry. Every now and then, I heard the echo of a cart squeaking somewhere far off, or a distant crackle from an employee's radio. 20 minutes later, I was at the checkout. Marcy was manning the single open register, scanning items slowly. Long day? I asked, trying to make conversation. Yeah, been quiet since 7. You're making my night interesting, though, she joked. Her laugh was soft, almost nervous. I smiled, trying to shake off the chill that had settled over me. Well, hopefully it won't get more interesting. After paying, I pushed my cart back toward my car. That's when I first noticed how empty the parking lot had become. Only a handful of cars were left. The wind had picked up, rattling the lampposts and making my jacket flap against my arms. I got close to my sedan, and that's when it happened. I froze. There was someone inside my car, not moving, just sitting there staring straight at me through the glass. A man, dark hair, pale face, eyes locked on mine. My throat went dry, and my heart slammed against my rib cage. He ducked down the second I blinked. I stumbled back, dropping the cart. One of the bags split open, and my groceries spilled across the cracked asphalt. I muttered, "No, no, no, no." I ran back into the store, nearly colliding with Marcy. "Oh my God, Jason, what's wrong?" she asked, her voice sharp now with alarm. There's someone in my car," I gasped, trying to steady my breathing. "I saw him. He ducked down when I looked." Her face went pale. "Are you sure? You want me to call security?" "Yes, please, call them." She grabbed the radio on her belt. "Security, we've got a situation. Someone's in a car outside." Her voice was steady, but I could hear the underlying tension. I pulled out my phone and dialed 911, hands shaking so badly I almost dropped it. "911, what's your emergency?" "There's a man in my car. I'm at Harbors on East Cedar Street," I stammered. The dispatcher asked for my description, told me to stay inside, and assured me officers were on the way. I stood near the front doors, trying to peer through the glass without looking too obvious. Minutes passed, and I kept glancing toward my car. That's when I saw him again. He walked in through the automatic doors like he belonged there, turning casually toward the home section. His eyes didn't meet anyone's. My gut twisted, and I whispered to Marcy, "I think that's him." She looked at me skeptical. "You're sure?" "Not 100%, but it has to be." We stayed out of sight, crouched behind an aisle. My phone buzzed. Another call from the dispatcher. "Officers are almost there. Stay calm." When the police arrived, 2 squad cars pulled into the lot. I stepped outside with them. The car doors were unlocked, the interior empty. "Positive he was in there?" one officer asked, a tall man with a mustache. "Yes, he ducked when I looked," I replied. "I must have left the doors unlocked." The officer nodded, speaking into his radio. "We'll check the area. Any idea what he looks like?" I described him. Tan shirt, dark hair, mid-20s build. Another officer stayed with me as they searched the lot. "He could have been trying doors," he said casually. "Lot of opportunistic thieves this time of night." I nodded, but the feeling in my gut told me this wasn't just a thief. About 10 minutes later, the officer returned. Didn't find anyone. Might have slipped out the back. I leaned against my car, trying to calm down. Every shadow seemed alive. Every flicker of light from the lamps made me flinch. When I finally drove home, I decided to take the back road behind the strip mall, hoping to avoid the main street traffic. It was dark, mostly unlit, except for the occasional orange glow from parking lot lights. Halfway down, I noticed a figure walking along the shoulder alone. Slow, dark hair, tan shirt. My stomach plummeted. Our eyes met for a split second. Then he bolted into the road. "Jesus Christ!" I shouted, jerking the wheel. Tires screeched as I swerved, barely avoiding him. He ran straight at me for a moment, arms flailing, face twisted in fury like he knew me. Then he disappeared into the field beside the road. I called the police again, shaking so violently I could barely hold the phone. They promised another patrol. By the time I got home, I was trembling too much to even close the door properly. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him ducking inside my car, eyes fixed on mine. I avoided Harbors for weeks, terrified of the parking lot. When I returned, everything looked normal. Bright, clean, mundane. But I never parked far from the entrance again. I always checked the back seat before getting in. I never saw him again, and the police never found anyone matching the description. But sometimes, when I pass a glass window at night, I catch my reflection. And for a second, I feel that same cold dread, like someone is still sitting there, waiting. Story 3. I never thought the worst night of my life would start with a simple cup of coffee and a break room chat at Walmart. My name is Noah Preston, and I'd been working there for almost 8 months, mostly in the clothing section folding shirts, organizing racks, helping customers find sizes. It wasn't glamorous, but I didn't mind. The money was enough to cover rent, and the co-workers made the long shifts bearable. The Walmart I worked at was in Cedar Hills, Oregon, a quiet town nestled near the forest, in the outskirts of Interstate 84. It was the kind of town where you'd recognize most faces after a week or two. That familiarity made it easy to slip into the rhythm of the store. There was one guy, though, who never really fit in. His name was Tyler. He worked in electronics, and there was just something off about him. Not the haunted in a horror movie kind of off. More like the type of person who watches you a moment too long in the hallway and then smiles like everything is normal. I first noticed him because he had this habit of showing up wherever I was, even when he had no reason to. At first, I brushed it off. I was busy enough with double stocking runs, late-night push carts, and keeping the department manager happy. But late one Wednesday night, things shifted. It was around 8:15 p.m., and the store was almost empty. The holiday music had switched to the low-volume evening playlist. A few shoppers wandered around in a daze, aimlessly pushing carts. I decided to take my break early, heading to the back break room near the employee lockers. The smell of reheated pizza and the faint hum of the vending machines greeted me. The room was empty, just quiet enough to breathe. I pulled out my phone and started scrolling through messages when the door creaked open. Tyler slipped inside, leaning against the doorway casually. "Hey," he said, smiling in a way that made me tense. "Hey, man," I replied, trying to keep my tone light. "Slow night?" he asked, tilting his head. "Yeah, seems like everyone decided to stay home tonight," I said, shrugging. He nodded. "Not a bad thing, though. Gives me time to think." I chuckled weakly, unsure what to say. Tyler always had this air of being just a little too interested in people. We started with small talk, how long I'd been working there, which departments I preferred, but gradually he steered the conversation toward personal topics. "Sonny, you live alone, right?" he asked, leaning forward, elbows on the table. "Yeah," I replied cautiously. "Just me." He smiled wider. "Cool, I live alone too. Hate having people over all the time, but sometimes it's nice to have company." I nodded, uncomfortable. "You should let me come by sometime," he added casually. "We could hang out, grab a beer or something." I froze for a second. I don't usually have people over." He laughed a little too loud. "Ah, come on, I'm chill. I don't get out much anyway." I shook my head. "Maybe another time," I said, hoping he'd drop it. Tyler didn't. He kept talking for the next few minutes, rambling about his old jobs, tech conspiracy theories, and random theories about society. I kept nodding, staring at my phone, just waiting for the timer on my break to go off. When it finally did, I stood up. "All right, man. I've got to get back. See you around." "Yeah," he said, still smiling. "See you, Noah." Over the next week, Tyler started showing up more often, sometimes near my section for no apparent reason. He'd ask about my weekend plans, if I liked the music in the store, even what I ate for lunch. I started feeling uneasy. One night, he asked again, his tone casual but insistent. "Hey, you ever think about me coming by your place just to hang out?" I paused. "Nah, man, been busy." He looked disappointed but didn't argue. "All right, maybe later." I thought that was the end of it, but a few days later, he disappeared from the schedule. I asked my manager about it. "Tyler?" "Oh yeah, he got let go. Something about not following store rules." I didn't think much of it, assuming he moved on to another job. Then one Thursday night, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Hey, it's Tyler from Walmart." I froze. I hadn't given him my number. Then I remembered the employee group chat. Everyone's numbers were visible there. "Hey, what's up?" I texted back. "Just wanted to say I miss working with you." "You were one of the cool ones," I replied politely. "Thanks. Hope you're doing well." Minutes later, another text came. I was thinking, maybe I could come by tonight. Catch up. My heart stopped. I typed back quickly, "No, that's not a good idea." No reply. Hours passed. Then at 9:10 p.m., my phone buzzed again. "I'm outside your place." I froze, stomach twisting. I lived alone on the first floor, facing a small, nearly empty parking lot. My hands shook as I texted, "What?" "Yeah, you're home. I saw you through the window." I bolted upright and peered through the blinds. Nothing. Just my car and two others in the lot. Then another message. "You should let me in. It's cold out here." I backed away, my hands trembling. I texted again. Tyler, leave. I'm calling the police. Silence for several unbearable minutes. Then I noticed movement outside the sliding door. I froze. Tyler was standing there, face pressed against the glass, smiling. Noah, he said, muffled by the glass. You weren't answering. I screamed, stumbling backward. My phone slipped, but I grabbed it and ran to my bedroom, locking the door behind me. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely dial 911. 911, what's your emergency? There's a guy from my job. He's outside my apartment. He won't leave. He says he wants in, I stammered. The dispatcher stayed calm. Stay on the line. Officers are on the way. Do not approach the door. I heard Tyler start knocking, softly at first, then harder. Come on, man, I just want to talk. My phone buzzed. Another text. Why'd you scream? I'm not going to hurt you. Just let me in. Then came the sound of the sliding door rattling. He was trying to force it open. My chest hammered, ears ringing. I clutched my phone and whispered, Please, just hurry. Red and blue lights flashed across my walls. I heard voices shouting. Tyler's voice rose above them. I'm not doing anything. I just wanted to talk. The officers finally got him under control. They took his information and escorted him away. One officer, older with gray hair, turned to me. You're lucky you called when you did. We'll file a trespass order. If he shows up again, he's going straight to jail. I nodded, still shaking. He got your number from work. Be careful what you share, he added. I spent the rest of the night sitting in my bedroom, heart pounding at every noise. I installed extra locks, a security camera, and even changed my number weeks later. I still flinch whenever I walk past electronics at any store. It all started with a simple break in the back room, and it nearly became something much worse. Story 4. I never thought I'd get nervous walking into a retail store at night, but that was before I worked at Meadowbrook Market, a big box store on the outskirts of Dayton. My name's Dylan Hayes. I was 22 at the time, just out of community college, scraping by with part-time jobs, with student loans, and rent that never seemed to shrink. I'd taken a position on the night stocking crew because it paid decently, and I could get my shifts around my college schedule. The store smelled like bleach and cardboard every evening, clean yet faintly sour, like coffee left out too long. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, humming in a way that got louder when the building emptied out. I'd learned to tune it out. Most nights were uneventful. Stocking shelves, checking inventory, joking with co-workers about weird customers, or the same corporate memos we all ignored. But that October night changed everything. It was the usual 5 p.m. to 11 p.m. shift. The store was chaotic when I arrived. Carts rolling, customers arguing over expired coupons, kids screaming down the toy aisle. By 10, though, most of the crowd had thinned. The kind of quiet where you can hear your own heartbeat if you pay attention. I was in aisle 12, straightening canned goods when my walkie crackled. Dylan, switch to channel 5. I frowned. Channel 5 was supposed to be reserved for management. Only managers, the head of security and the overnight shift lead, were supposed to touch it. Okay, this is Dylan. I pressed the button. Silence, just faint static. Then a slow, low laugh crept through. It wasn't casual. It felt deliberate, like someone was measuring my reaction. Hello, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Who's this? A man's voice answered, distorted, clipped through some kind of modulator. You're here. Dylan, I see you. My hand froze around a can of tomato soup. Come on, this isn't funny. Who is this? No answer. Just that deep, slow hum of a laugh. Then softer, chillingly calm. I'm waiting for you. Outside. I stared at the walkie, half expecting it to have fallen into a glitchy loop. My first instinct was that someone was pranking me. Maybe a former coworker had bought a cheap walkie and was screwing with me. But they knew my name. The way they said it made my skin crawl. By 11, the store was dead quiet. Music off. Aisle lights dimmed. I clocked out, my stomach twisting into knots. Outside, the October air was cold, biting through my hoodie. The parking lot stretched wide, half lit by flickering lamps. Most employee cars were parked near the center. Mine was in the far corner, under one of the oldest, flickering lights. I noticed a dark blue SUV a few rows over. No headlights, engine running. My first thought was a waiting customer, but something about it made my chest tighten. As I approached, the headlights flicked on. I froze, key halfway in the lock. The SUV started moving slowly. I stepped back. It rolled closer to my car, then stopped. The door creaked open a few inches, a boot hitting the asphalt. That was enough. I yanked my keys, slammed into the car, locked the doors, and floored it toward the front of the lot. I could see it in my side mirror. The SUV tailing me silently. I swerved between empty aisles, heart hammering, and parked near the main entrance, shaking. "Dylan?" a voice called. It was Jamie, a cashier who stayed late sometimes. She noticed my pale face immediately. "Hey, what's wrong?" There's a guy in a SUV. Been following me," I stammered. Her brow furrowed. "Are you sure?" "Yes." I pointed toward the rear rows. The SUV sat there, headlights off, engine silent. She looked. Then it started moving slowly, leaving the lot. "Do you want me to walk you out?" she asked, concerned. "Yeah, thanks," I said, forcing a breath. We waited 10 minutes talking quietly, pretending we weren't scared. When we went out again, the lot seemed normal. The parking lights flickered, the moths circled them lazily. I got in my car and tried to relax. As I reached the exit, I saw it. The same SUV parked near the edge of the lot, engine off, lights out. My body froze. Then I instinctively took the back road. Weaving through dark service roads behind the shopping center, I parked behind a closed PetSmart, killed the lights, and waited. 10 minutes, 15, nothing. Finally, I drove home cautiously, checking mirrors constantly. The next day, I brought it up to my manager, Rachel, while she was counting backstock. "That's odd," she said, frowning. "Channel 5 isn't normally used except for emergency calls or managers. Maybe someone outside picked it up accidentally." "They said my name," I said, still staring at the walkie clipped to my belt. Rachel replied, shrugging. "Could have been coincidence. Weird timing, but maybe nothing." I wanted to believe her, but the memory of that slow laugh and the SUV's tinted windows haunted me. Over the next week, I started noticing small things. Lights flickering in empty aisles, someone at the end of the lot watching through tinted windows. The walkie crackling randomly. I began leaving through back exits only, never alone. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was waiting for me. One night, I stayed late to stock shelves near the electronics section. The store was completely empty. A faint hiss echoed from the walkie. I froze. "Dylan." I dropped the box I was holding. My heart pounded. The voice wasn't distorted this time, just low, slow, deliberate. "Who? What do you want?" I whispered. "I want you to see me." I bolted for the service doors. Outside, the lot stretched wide and empty under dim lights. Nothing. I took a few steps toward my car. Then I saw it. The dark SUV parked at the far end. Lights off, engine running. No one was visible, but I could feel it watching. My stomach turned. I drove back slowly, keeping headlights off, hugging shadows. That night, I realized this wasn't random. Someone was obsessed. Someone dangerous. Weeks passed, and eventually I switched shifts. I told myself it was over, but every time I pass a Meadowbrook Market parking lot after dark, I glance at the far rows, half expecting those dark windows and that SUV to be waiting. I never saw it again, but the fear never left. Sometimes, late at night, I can still hear the faint static in my mind, the slow laugh and the words, "I'm waiting for you." And I know somewhere out there, he might still be. Story 5, I was 16 the summer it happened. Not quite an adult, but old enough to stay up late and think I could handle anything the world threw at me. My parents had bought our house in Willow Creek when I was 13, a modest 2-story colonial with cream siding, a small front porch, and a backyard that faded into a thicket of trees. It was quiet, maybe too quiet, the kind of town where everyone knew each other's business, and mail carriers waved as they passed. My name's Ryan Sullivan, and that summer I was about to learn that quiet could hide things far darker than I imagined. I lived there with my parents and my older brother Dylan, who was 18 at the time. Dylan was the classic teenager addicted to video games, So our nights were filled with the echoing shouts of, "Aim, aim," or "Cover me," coming from his room. I usually stayed up later than I should have too, watching random YouTube videos or trying to finish entire seasons of shows in one sitting. My parents didn't mind. They figured we were old enough to handle ourselves, and besides, they liked the quiet the house enjoyed while we were glued to screens. That night, it was close to the end of June. Summer in Wisconsin meant warm nights, and my window was open to let in the faint breeze that smelled of grass and distant lake water. I'd been binge-watching some true crime docuseries on my laptop, earbuds in, when the room went eerily still. Dylan's yelling had stopped hours ago, and the house had that quiet feeling you get right before dawn, even though it was just past 2 in the morning. I stretched, yawned, and shut my laptop, deciding it was finally time for bed. That's when I felt it, the kind of instinctive, prickling awareness that something was wrong. My eyes drifted to the window. At first I thought it was a trick of the moonlight, but then I saw him, a young man tall and thin, wearing a bright red polo and khaki pants, standing motionless in our backyard. His hands were in his pockets, and he was staring straight at my window. I froze. "No, no way," I whispered under my breath. My heart pounded like a drum in my chest. I didn't recognize him. He looked maybe 19, blonde hair catching the moonlight, the kind of casual uniform that screamed store employee. But why here? Why now? I crept downstairs, every step on the wooden staircase a potential alarm. My parents' bedroom door was closed. I didn't want to wake them. Dylan's light was off, which was unusual. I peeked through the kitchen window just as I was about to flip on the backyard light. He hadn't moved. I hit the switch. The backyard flooded with yellow glow. His head turned slowly toward the house. I dove behind the counter, heart hammering, listening for any movement. Footsteps, rustling, something. But nothing came. When I finally dared to peek, he was walking toward the side of the fence. Not running, just calm and deliberate, like he'd finished some silent task. I stayed crouched there for a long minute before sneaking back upstairs. My hands were still shaking. I couldn't tell if it was fear or adrenaline. I stared out the window for what felt like an eternity. By then, he was gone, and only shadows moved in the wind. The next morning at breakfast, I told my parents, "Mom, Dad, someone was in the backyard last night, a guy in a red shirt." My mom frowned. "At 2 in the morning? Are you sure it wasn't just a neighbor?" "No, Mom. He wasn't just walking by. He was looking at the house." My voice shook slightly, and I could see my mom's lips pressed together, worried. Dylan smirked. "Maybe he was checking prices in your backyard, bro." I rolled my eyes, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. 3 weeks later, I was at the Willow Creek Walmart, not far from our house, just grabbing a few things when I saw him. Same red polo, same khakis, same blonde hair. He was pushing a cart full of boxes toward the checkout lanes, completely ordinary, except for the way our eyes met. He froze for a fraction of a second, then looked away and walked briskly down an aisle. My stomach twisted. I couldn't breathe properly for a moment, and the cashier asked if I was okay. I mumbled something about being tired, grabbed my bag, and got out of there as fast as I could. I told my mom that night. She bit her lip, glancing toward the backyard through the kitchen window. "Ryan, maybe we should call the police just to be safe." Dad shrugged. "If he didn't break in, there's not much they can do." But I couldn't let it go. It felt like he knew me, like he knew where my room was. Exactly, summer went on, and I kept expecting him to appear again. At first, I thought it might have been a coincidence, but one night, about a month later, I saw a faint shadow moving past the edge of the fence. My stomach dropped. I grabbed the baseball bat from the closet, creeping downstairs. The backyard was empty, except for the silhouette of a neighbor's tree swaying in the wind. I tried to convince myself it was nothing. Maybe a drunk kid wandering around, maybe someone lost. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. One Saturday, Dylan and I were riding our bikes to the corner store. When we passed the Target near Main Street, I noticed the blonde guy stocking shelves near the electronics section. My stomach sank. He looked up, saw me, and froze. That recognition, I'll never forget it. Then he ducked behind a display and disappeared. I started taking precautions. I locked all doors and windows. Even in the middle of the day, I installed a small camera above the back door. just in case. Every time I passed a red-shirted employee in a store, my heart raced. By late July, the unease had become a constant presence. One night, lying in bed, I heard faint creaks from the living room. My parents were asleep. Dylan was snoring. My heart rate shot up. I grabbed my phone and quietly slid open the blinds. The backyard was empty, just the shadows. And then I saw it, a faint movement by the back fence. My breath caught. He was standing there again. Same red polo, same khakis, same calm, deliberate stance, staring at the house. I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to confront him. I didn't want to wake my parents. I just froze, clutching the bat under my pillow. Minutes passed, then he turned and walked away slowly, fading into the darkness. The next morning, I called the local police. They were polite, taking a report, but their words did little to ease the fear gnawing at me. We'll keep an eye out, but without any evidence, there's little we can do. Months went by, I didn't see him again. Not at Target, not in our backyard, not anywhere. School started, life went on, but that summer had changed me. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone had been watching, studying, maybe even planning. Even 10 years later, when I drive past a Target, my stomach still tightens. I remember every detail, the pale blonde hair, the red polo, the way he stood silently, watching. Sometimes when I'm at my parents' house and I catch my reflection in that old bedroom window, I half expect to see him standing there again, like he never left. I've never forgotten that summer. And sometimes, late at night, when the world is quiet and still, I swear I can feel eyes on me, just beyond the glass. Story 6. I had been working at Eastfield Market in Cedar Grove, Illinois, for nearly a decade. Not the kind of store people think about. It wasn't in downtown Chicago or some bustling city center. It was a mid-sized supermarket right off Route 62, wedged between a worn-out strip mall and a gas station that never seemed to close. I started there when I was just 18, a skinny kid named Alex, thinking I'd only last through the summer before college. I never imagined I'd still be here, running night shifts, supervising a staff younger than me, and knowing every aisle, every squeaky floorboard, every hum of the fluorescent lights like it was part of me. The store had its rhythm. The weekday rush was always different from the weekend chaos. Thursdays were quiet but never predictable. Enough traffic to keep things interesting, but slow enough to notice the little details. A toddler staring at the cereal aisle, an elderly man carefully examining canned beans, the faint whiff of fried food from the food court outside. It was around 7:15 p.m. when it happened. I was in the back office, going over the nightly shift schedules with Mia, one of our new cashiers. "Alex, do you think we can shuffle Friday's closing? I have to cover my sister," she said, frowning at the schedule. "I'll see what I can do," I said, pushing my glasses up. My pen scratched the paper, a comforting sound amidst the quiet hum of the store. Then my walkie crackled. Alex? Aisle 12. "We got a problem," came a shaky voice. It was Jordan from Produce. His tone made my stomach tighten. "What kind of problem?" I asked, standing and grabbing my jacket. I don't know, and it's a guy. He's following Lizzie. She's freaking out." "On my way." Lizzie, our shelving associate, was one of the youngest on the floor, maybe 19, with bright hair and an easy smile. She wasn't the type to overreact, so hearing Jordan's voice made me quicken my pace. I turned the corner into aisle 12, and my blood went cold. There she was, Lizzie, clutching a box of laundry detergent like it was a shield. Across from her stood a man in his mid-40s, unshaven, hoodie pulled tight, eyes glossy and unfocused. His face twisted in a mixture of anger and something darker, something unpredictable. "Sir, please step back," I said firmly, keeping my hands visible. I could feel my pulse quicken. "I didn't do anything," he barked, voice rough, echoing slightly off the high ceilings. "She's lying. You people are all insane." Lizzie's voice was trembling. He followed me through 4 aisles," she said, barely audible. I didn't know what to do." "Sir," I said evenly, "you need to give her space. This is our store, and we don't tolerate harassment. If you continue, I'll have to ask you to leave." He stepped closer, his face reddening. Harass? You're crazy, I'm shopping, damn it. I signaled to the security guard, Mike, standing a few feet back to stay ready but calm. Sir, I need you to step away or I will call the police. His jaw clenched and for a moment I thought he might lunge. Then with a loud wet sound he spat on the floor. You don't know who you're messing with, he sneered before storming toward the front. I followed, keeping my distance, ready to intervene. As he reached the automatic doors, he spun around, screaming again, his voice carrying across the store. You think this is over? You're going to regret this. Then he was gone. Inside, Lizzie sat on a crate in the break room, shaking. I handed her a water bottle. You did the right thing. You stayed safe. I thought he was going to hurt me, she admitted. Her hands trembled. I've never seen someone look so empty. It was terrifying. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. I know. Let's log the incident, and I'll call corporate security to make a note. 15 minutes later, my walkie crackled again. Alex, you might want to see this, said Sam, our cart attendant. He's outside, in a car, driving like a maniac. My stomach dropped. What do you mean like a maniac? The gray sedan, speeding, hitting the curbs. He's swerving everywhere. I ran to the front, and there he was. The same hoodie, the same wild eyes behind the wheel, fishtailing across the parking lot. My heart was hammering. Lock the doors, I shouted to the cashier nearest the entrance. The heavy sliding doors slid closed with a soft click. Sealing the store, I called 911. Yes, this is Alex Carter at Eastfield Market. We have a man driving recklessly in our parking lot. He was just involved in a harassment incident inside the store. Please send help immediately. Through the glass, we watched as the sedan careened between parked cars, narrowly missing the grocery pickup zone. Then with a screech of metal and glass, the car collided with an SUV. The crash wasn't massive, but it was enough to make everyone freeze. The driver staggered out, swaying, and then, without warning, bolted toward the Applebee's across the lot. Call it in, I yelled to Sam, who was already on his phone, reporting the man fleeing on foot. Within minutes, police cars arrived, lights flashing red and blue, officers fanning out across the lot. They captured him climbing over a fence behind the restaurant, stumbling drunk, disoriented. Inside, the store finally exhaled collectively. Lizzie sat on the floor of the break room, clutching her knees. He's not coming back, she whispered. No, I said gently. He won't be back. You did everything right. Later, after the chaos had subsided and the lot was quiet, I stayed in the office, filling out the detailed incident reports. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. I could still feel the adrenaline in my chest, the way my muscles had tensed, ready for whatever he might do. I thought about how normal he had looked at first. The hoodie, the scruffy beard. Just another man walking through the sliding doors of a store. But people like that, the ones whose anger is barely contained and whose minds are fractured, they're the ones who turn ordinary nights into nightmares. The cold night air bit at my face as I finally stepped outside, surveying the lot. The SUV was gone, replaced by oil stains that reflected the light of a lone street lamp. I sat in my car for a while, trying to calm down, trying to process the randomness of it all. It made me realize something about this job, about stores like Eastfield Market. We talk about rude customers, long hours, stock shortages, but the real danger is unpredictable people. People who walk in looking normal but leave showing you just how fragile safety can be. The next morning, I arrived early. The parking lot was pristine, as if nothing had happened. But inside, the hum of the store felt heavier, a silent echo of the night before I checked in with Lizzie, who was nervous but smiling. She was young, and she needed reassurance. You'll be okay, I told her. And remember, if anything like this ever happens again, call us, don't engage. She nodded, still pale, still shaken. As the day went on, the store's rhythm returned. Customers came and went. The lights buzzed. The registers beeped. Life carried on. But I couldn't shake the image of his eyes, empty and broken, and the way the world could suddenly feel unsafe, even in a place designed to feel ordinary. And sometimes that's scarier than anything else. Story 7. I remember the first day I walked into Hillcrest Market like it was yesterday. I was 19, just graduated from high school, and like most kids my age, I had no clue what I wanted to do with my life. All I knew was that I needed money fast. College was still months away, and my parents made it clear that I wasn't getting a free ride through the summer. So there I was, standing in front of the automatic sliding doors, the sticky smell of popcorn and bleach greeting me like an uninvited old friend. Hillcrest Market was your typical suburban superstore. Bright fluorescent lights, endless aisles of canned goods and cleaning supplies, a small cafe in the corner, and a parking lot that always smelled faintly of asphalt and gasoline. My manager, a wiry guy named Lucas, handed me a red polo and khaki pants, giving me a crash course on registers and courtesy phrases. "Smile," he said, "even if your soul is dying inside." I laughed nervously, thinking he was joking, but over the next few weeks I realized he wasn't. I spent the first few days just learning the ropes, scanning items, bagging groceries, greeting customers. Most people were fine. Some were rude. But then there were nights like that one, where everything normal just curdled. It was late July. The sun had dipped low, leaving the parking lot shimmering in the heat, and my shift had been dragging for hours. I was stationed at Register 7, a corner spot that rarely got heavy traffic after 8 p.m. The store was quiet, save for the soft hum of the fluorescent lights and the occasional beep of a scanner. Somewhere down the line, I was wiping the counter idly when I saw her walk in. She looked like she didn't belong here at all. Mid-40s, hair tangled, wearing a worn-out brown trench coat that made no sense for the summer heat. She had a large tote bag slung over one shoulder and eyes that darted around the store like she was hunting, not shopping. My stomach sank. Instinctively, I hoped she wouldn't come my way. Of course, she did. She approached my register with one item, a half-empty bottle of olive oil. "Evening," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Did you find everything okay?" "I need to return this," she said flatly. Placing the bottle on the counter, I picked it up, scanning it out of habit. The label made my chest tighten. "Ma'am, this is a great value brand. That's a Walmart product. We don't carry it here." She blinked at me, frowning. "No, I bought this here last week. I know this store." I took a deep breath. "I'm sorry, but we really don't sell that brand. You might want to check Walmart." Her frown hardened. "Don't tell me where I shop." Her voice was sharper now, impatient, almost dangerous. "I'm just trying to help," I said cautiously. She slammed her palm on the counter. The olive oil wobbled threateningly. "You people don't even check your shelves." "I know what I bought. Stop lying to me." I forced a small smile. "I promise I'm not lying. If you want to return it, you'll have to go to customer service." "They said the same thing," she snapped. "That's why I came here. I know what I bought." My pulse started to speed up. "Ma'am, I can't override that. Please, ma'am, don't ma'am me," she shrieked. Her voice echoed in the empty aisles behind her. "I'm not crazy. It's just a bottle of olive oil. What's wrong with you people?" Customers in nearby lanes began to glance over. Some shuffled away slowly, pretending to check their phones. Others abandoned carts mid-aisle. I pressed the little red button under the counter that called for a manager. My hands were shaking. Lucas appeared a moment later, tall, sandy-haired, calm in a way that made me feel a fraction safer. "Evening," he said, surveying the scene. "What's going on?" "This kid refuses to take my return," she spat, her voice rising. "I bought this here, and you're all lying to me." Lucas took the bottle and examined it, his brows knitted together. "Ma'am, this is great value. Walmart brand. We don't sell it here." Her face twisted, eyes wild. "Oh, you people. You think you can gaslight me? I know where I shop." I could feel the heat of panic climbing my chest. Lucas tried again, calm but firm. "Ma'am, I need you to calm down or we'll have to call security." Her voice dropped suddenly, eerily quiet. "Security," she hissed. "Fine." She turned, walked to the cooler at the end of my lane, and bent down, emerging with a bottle of Mountain Dew. I froze. "Ma'am, please." She cracked it open, and soda erupted like a miniature fountain, spraying across the counter, Lucas and me. The green liquid hissed as it soaked into the floor tiles. She laughed, high, broken, insane, and grabbed another bottle, shaking it violently. "Call them!" Lucas yelled. "They're already on their way," I shouted back, ducking behind the counter. She opened the second bottle. The geyser hit me directly in the face. I gagged on the sticky, sweet spray. Customers screamed, fleeing the lane. Candy displays were drenched, receipts soaked, the smell of soda and bleach mixing into a nauseating cocktail. Frank, the security guard, jogged over. He was overweight, middle-aged, wearing a black vest that said Asset Protection in block letters. "Ma'am," he barked, "you need to calm down right now." "Don't touch me," she shrieked. "You're all the same." "Ma'am, put it down," he said, voice firm. "Don't come near me." She froze. Her wild glare softened into a blank, almost dead expression. Then, just as suddenly, she bolted toward the exit, pushing a shopping cart and nearly slipping on the wet floor. Automatic doors closed behind her, and the store went eerily silent. I was soaked, shivering, and smelling like Mountain Dew and floor cleaner. Lucas handed me a paper towel. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded numbly, still processing. "Yeah, I think so." Police arrived a short while later, taking statements and checking security footage. Later that night, an officer told us they found her a few miles away at a gas station, yelling about fake stores and imposters. She had been banned from every Hillcrest market in the state. I quit a few weeks later, not because of her alone, but because that night taught me something. People are unpredictable, frighteningly so. One moment, a store feels safe. The next, it's a cage full of strangers with unknown intentions. Even now, years later, I can't walk past a soda cooler without shivering. The smell of olive oil, the hiss of carbonation, the echo of a high-pitched laugh, it all comes back, clear as day. And for a second, I see her eyes wide and wild, shaking another bottle like she's about to explode all over again. Some nights I wake up, heart hammering, convinced I can hear the fizzing. I tell myself it's just a memory, but deep down, I know it's something more. Some small part of that chaos lingers, tucked away in the corner of my mind, waiting for the next late-night checkout to bring it back. Story 8. I remember the first time I went to a big box store by myself. Well, not entirely by myself. My mom, Karen, had taken me along, as usual, but she'd let me wander within sight while she browsed. I was 11, an age where you're old enough to feel independent, but young enough that everything in a giant store feels enormous. We lived in Cedar Brook, a quiet Midwestern town in Indiana, the kind of place where exciting meant a new pizza joint opening, or the annual summer fair at the high school. The local shopping center, with its massive parking lot and blinking neon signs, was the biggest place around, and Target was the crown jewel. I loved Target. The fluorescent lights had a way of making everything look vivid, almost like a stage. The smell of fresh popcorn from the snack kiosk hit you in the lobby, mixed with that faint chemical tang of floor cleaner. To me, wandering the aisles was like exploring a maze filled with tiny adventures, video games, DVDs, the toy section. It was my world. That night, it was just after dinner. I was still wearing my pajamas under a hoodie, green flannel pants with dinosaurs stomping across the fabric, and sneakers I hadn't tied properly. "Maddie, remember to stay where I can see you," Mom said, adjusting her coat and gripping the cart handle. "I know, Mom," I said, bouncing on the balls of my feet. "I'll be right by electronics." She gave me a half smile, the kind that said she was both proud and mildly anxious about letting me roam. I didn't care. Electronics were like a small city to me. TVs along the walls, each playing the same looping Target ad demo screens, flashing colors, game consoles on display. Like treasures behind glass, I was in heaven. The store wasn't crowded that night. A few scattered shoppers wandered aisles, carts rattling lightly over the linoleum. I slipped past them, heading for the section near the back, where they had the smaller TVs mounted on brackets. One particular TV always hung high from the ceiling in that corner, playing promotional clips. I usually ignored it, but that night it felt like it was waiting. I was flipping through a rack of game guides, old PlayStation and GameCube titles, when the sound changed. First, it was faint static, the kind you barely notice, like a radio losing signal. Then the static escalated, sharp and grating. I froze. The other TVs still played cheerful commercials, but the ceiling screen, the one that never had a game demo, shifted. The red Target logo vanished. The bright flashing images were replaced by a near black screen with a dim, pulsing light in the corner. Then I saw it, the shape of a man's head. Not detailed, just a shadow, but unmistakably human. My stomach flipped. He tilted his head slowly, as though noticing me. The first words crawled from the speakers, warped and distorted. "Can you see me?" I stepped back, heart hammering. Who's there?" I whispered, though the words barely left my mouth. "Don't look away," the voice said, low and twisting like it was underwater. I couldn't move. My brain was scrambling, trying to rationalize. Maybe it was a new movie trailer, a promo I hadn't seen, but everything about it screamed wrong. I couldn't," I said out loud, feeling ridiculous even as I spoke. The figure shifted again, slow and deliberate, and something, another shadow maybe, moved behind him for the briefest instant. My chest tightened. My legs wanted to run before my brain even processed the danger. I bolted, sneakers squeaking against the floor. I sprinted past the aisles of TVs and game displays, past a woman pushing a cart piled high with paper towels. She looked at me like I was insane. "Honey, you okay?" she asked. I nodded too quickly and didn't stop, weaving through the store until I found Mom, who was lingering by the bedding section. "Mom," I gasped, clutching her arm. "There's something wrong with that TV." Karen frowned. "Wrong how?" "There was a man, or a figure. He was talking to me. The screen, it wasn't normal." She hesitated, her brow furrowing, then sighed lightly. "Maddie, probably just a weird glitch. Those screens sometimes freak out." "No, it wasn't a glitch," I insisted. My voice was shaking. Mom studied me for a moment, then softened. Okay, let's see it." I wanted to refuse. Every fiber of my body screamed not to go back, but I was obedient, or maybe just too curious to ignore it. We walked together, Mom's hand on the cart, my stomach coiled tight. The TV was gone, not off, gone. Only the empty bracket remained, dangling slightly from the ceiling. I blinked. It's gone." A man in a red Target shirt noticed us, name tag. Jerry. He laughed lightly. "Ah, yeah, that old screen kept acting up. Scared one of our guys a few weeks ago. Corporate finally told us to take it down. Too many complaints." I wanted to ask more, but Mom called me from the next aisle. I followed, heart still pounding, adrenaline giving me chills I couldn't shake. Back in the car, the heat from the dashboard and the hum of the engine did nothing to calm me. "You look like you saw a ghost," Mom said, glancing at me. Maybe I did," I muttered, staring out the window at the empty parking lot. For days afterward, the memory haunted me. Nightmares of the black screen, the warped voice, the feeling of being seen. Even during the day, every time I passed a monitor, every flicker in the corner of my vision made me jump. Weeks later, I returned with Mom. I went straight to the electronics corner. The bracket was still there, empty and still. But I swore for a heartbeat I saw the faint outline of a face just as before I blinked, and it vanished. Years passed. I grew up, left Cedar Brook for college, moved to another state, but the memory never left me. I avoided big box electronics sections for years. The sound, the feeling of being watched, it lingered in the corners of my mind. Even now, decades later, whenever I step into a quiet store, the hum of fluorescent lights and the faint smell of popcorn and floor cleaner brings me back. The image flashes unbidden in my memory, a shadowed face, a warped voice asking if I could see it. And sometimes, if the store is empty and silent just right, I swear I hear the static again. It's fleeting, gone before I can fully process it, but it's enough. Enough to make my stomach flip, enough to make me glance at the monitors, and I still wonder, after all these years, if that man was real, and if he was watching me then, watching me now.